My name is Alina Rivers, and I'm 30 years old. I grew up in a house where I was more like furniture than a person. My parents, Harold and Clara, only had eyes for my younger brother, Ryan. He was their star, their treasure. And I was the extra. I could get straight A's, win awards, and bring home trophies, but it never mattered. Ryan only had to smile to get what he wanted. I had to beg to be seen. I learned early that love in our house came with conditions. And for me, those conditions were never met. When I turned 18, I moved out. I worked 2 jobs through college. I studied accounting. I saved every penny. No one helped me. No one even asked how I was doing. But I kept going because I had something to prove, mainly to myself. After years of saving, I finally bought a luxury car. It wasn't just a car. It was freedom. Proof that I didn't need anyone to rise. I didn't know that car would become the reason for a disaster. When Ryan announced his engagement to Leah, I wasn't surprised. He was always the center of everything. My parents were thrilled. They threw money into the wedding like it was nothing, caterers, flowers, a huge venue. It looked like something out of a movie. I got an invitation. Of course, not a warm one. More like an obligation. Still, I went. I told myself I was doing it for Ryan, even if we were never close. A few days before the wedding, I was sitting in the living room at my parents' house, just sipping tea quietly. That's when it happened. Harold cleared his throat. "You should give your car to Ryan. As a wedding present." I thought he was joking. I laughed a little. But Clara jumped in, serious. "It's the least you can do for your brother. He's getting married. You're not using the car for anything important." I stared at them, stunned. I worked for that car. I saved for years. Harold shrugged. "Family comes first. This isn't about money. It's about sacrifice." "No," I said quietly. "I'm not giving away my car." The room went cold. Clara looked at me like I had insulted them. "You're being selfish." Harold's face darkened, but he said nothing more. I left without finishing my tea. I didn't think it would go further than that. I was wrong. The wedding day arrived, and the venue was packed. Guests smiled, posed for photos, and talked about how perfect Ryan and Leah looked together. I stood near the back, in a simple navy dress, keeping to myself like I always had. No one asked how I was. No one mentioned the argument about the car. I started to believe maybe they had dropped the idea. I was wrong. Right after the speeches, while people clapped and music played softly, Harold approached me. His face was stiff, his voice low. "You still have a chance to do the right thing," he said. I looked him in the eyes. "I already said no." Clara joined him, her arms folded tightly. "You're ruining your brother's big day. All because of a stupid car." I kept my voice steady. "I earned that car. It's mine." Harold's face twisted with rage. "You've always been ungrateful." Without another word, he stormed toward the cake table. Sitting beside the stacked tiers was a metal cake stand, one of those heavy decorative ones, shiny and sharp-edged. Before I could react, he grabbed it. He turned around and charged at me. And then he swung the cake stand and struck me on the side of the head. The pain was like fire. My ears rang. The world spun. I fell to the floor, barely hearing the screams. Gasps filled the hall. Phones were already recording. Guests backed away. Clara didn't move. Ryan stood frozen, his mouth open. Blood ran down my temple. My dress darkened. Everything was spinning, but I was conscious. Then chaos broke loose. 2 men tackled Harold. Someone called 911. A woman pressed a cloth to my head. The music stopped. The wedding stopped. And just like that, Ryan's perfect day turned into a nightmare. The ambulance arrived within minutes. I was lying on the floor, my head spinning, my hair sticky with blood. 2 paramedics knelt beside me, asking questions I could barely answer. The police came right behind them. Harold was already in handcuffs, shouting that he had done nothing wrong. Clara stood beside him, yelling at the officers, demanding they let a father discipline his child. I wasn't a child. I was 30, and he hadn't disciplined me. He had attacked me with a metal cake stand in front of 100 people. The guests looked shocked, but no one tried to defend Harold. Most of them had it all recorded on their phones. Some were already sharing the video online. I could hear people whispering she said no to giving up her car, and they lost it over a wedding gift. Then I saw Ryan. He wasn't helping me. He wasn't near Harold either. He was in a corner, his head in his hands, shaking. And standing next to him was Leah, her wedding dress slightly wrinkled, her face pale. I was lifted onto a stretcher. As the paramedics rolled me out, Leah stepped forward. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't say anything. I was too weak to speak, too tired to cry. But in that moment, I saw it, regret in her eyes. And behind her, Ryan didn't even look up. He never looked at me. The hospital was cold and too bright. A doctor stitched the cut on my head and said I was lucky. No concussion. No fracture. Just a deep wound. But the real pain wasn't physical. I lay in that hospital bed alone. No one from my family came. Not even Ryan. I wasn't surprised. A detective visited me that evening. She had seen the video. Everyone had. "Do you want to press charges?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The next few days moved fast. Harold and Clara were arrested and charged with assault with a deadly weapon and intent to cause bodily harm. The video was all over social media and local news. Their friends turned silent. Neighbors stared. And the wedding? Cancelled. The venue released a statement. The florist demanded payment. The caterers packed up and left. And then came the shocker: Leah called off the engagement. She visited me at the hospital. Her voice shook. "I thought I knew your family." "I didn't. I can't marry into this." "I'm sorry." I believed her. She looked broken in her own way. She left without waiting for a reply. 2 days later, I was discharged. I went home, alone, but strong. The car they wanted so badly was parked outside, shining under the morning sun. Mine. Still mine. The trial was set within weeks. The evidence was everywhere. Videos, photos, witness statements. The courtroom stayed full. Reporters lined the back wall. Strangers I didn't know whispered my name. I sat on the witness stand, hands shaking, but my voice clear. I said no, I told the judge. They didn't care. Harold refused to look at me. Clara stared straight ahead, face stiff like stone. Ryan wasn't there at all. The prosecutor showed the video. The moment Harold grabbed the cake stand. The blow to my head. The screams. The blood. No one could deny it. Their lawyer tried to paint it as a family misunderstanding. He called me emotionally cold. Said I had always kept my distance. He didn't mention how I raised myself. How I studied alone. How I saved every dollar I ever earned. The judge listened carefully. The jury took 1 day. Guilty. Harold and Clara were sentenced to 4 years in prison. No chance of parole for 2. I walked out of that courtroom lighter. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt free. After the trial ended, I tried to slip back into a quiet life. But the town had changed. Everywhere I went, people whispered. Some offered kind words. Others just stared. One evening, as I sat alone in a coffee shop, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around and saw Matthew, one of Ryan's old friends. He had been at the wedding too, one of the few who had tried to stop Harold after the attack. "I just wanted to see how you're doing," he said. We talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. He didn't ask about the trial. He didn't look at me with pity. He just listened. Days turned into weeks. We met again and again. He was calm where my life had been chaos. He laughed easily, listened deeply, and never once made me feel like a burden. One night, as we sat watching the stars from a park bench, he turned to me. "You deserved better," he said simply. Tears filled my eyes. For once, they weren't from pain. Matthew didn't rush me. He didn't push for anything. Instead, he stood beside me while I rebuilt my life. I got a better job offer, something I hadn't even dared to hope for before. I bought new furniture for my apartment. I even started saving for a small vacation, something just for me. The car they had tried to steal? I drove it with pride. Every time I started the engine, it felt like a small victory. Matthew and I grew closer. He was steady, patient, and kind, everything my family had never been. One evening, after dinner at my place, he handed me a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring. No big speeches. No crowds. No pressure. He just said, "I love you. Will you build a life with me?" For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. I said yes. And this time, there was no one to steal my happiness. The months that followed were filled with quiet moments of growth. Matthew and I settled into a routine. We spent weekends hiking, cooking meals together, and exploring parts of the city I had never seen before. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, worried about my past. Instead, I was looking ahead, planning for a future that felt possible. As our engagement moved forward, I started to think about what I truly wanted, not what my parents wanted, not what Ryan had always expected, but what I needed for myself. I wanted to feel at peace, to create a life that was entirely my own. I also reached out to Leah, who had reached out to me a few times since the wedding incident. She had moved on from Ryan, and I had forgiven her. She had nothing to do with the violence my family had inflicted on me, and she had tried to help me in her own way. We met for coffee, and though the conversation was awkward at first, we eventually talked about the life we both wanted to build, free from the weight of the past. But then came a surprise. I received a letter from Ryan. He hadn't been in touch since the wedding. He had never reached out after the trial. But now, out of nowhere, there was this letter, scribbled in his unmistakable handwriting. He apologized for everything. He admitted he had stood by while our father had attacked me. He had ignored me for years. And in that letter, he told me he didn't want to be like our parents anymore. I didn't know how to feel. The person who had ignored my pain for so long, the one who had let Harold's cruelty slide, was now trying to reconnect. I folded the letter carefully, setting it aside. I wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. Maybe someday, but not now. I had finally found peace in my own life. I wasn't willing to let that go. Months passed. My relationship with Matthew deepened. Our wedding planning began to take shape, and I was involved every step of the way. I found myself excited about the idea of starting a family with someone who loved and respected me. Ryan's letter lingered in the back of my mind, but I no longer felt the need to respond. There was no more weight to his words. I had spent years hoping for his support, for his validation, but now I realized I didn't need him to define my worth. I had already done that for myself. One evening, Matthew and I were sitting on the couch, sipping wine after dinner. The TV was on, but we weren't paying attention. He looked at me, his eyes full of warmth. "I love the woman you've become," he said softly. I smiled, feeling a peace I had never known before. "I never knew I could be this happy," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Matthew leaned in and kissed me, a simple kiss that felt like the beginning of a whole new chapter. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to fight for happiness. It was here, in this moment. Weeks later, we stood in front of our friends and family, those who truly cared about us, and exchanged vows. The ceremony was small, but it felt perfect. Matthew and I promised to build a life together, one filled with love, respect, and understanding. And so I did. As for my parents, Harold and Clara, life went on. I didn't keep up with them. I didn't need to. They were serving their time, and I was finally free. I didn't have to live in their shadow anymore. And Ryan? Well, his letter remained tucked away in a drawer. Maybe one day I'd forgive him. But I wasn't rushing that decision. My life was mine now, and I intended to live it for me. With Matthew by my side, I knew the future was bright. The end of one chapter only meant the beginning of another. And this time, it was my story to tell. I stood tall, no longer defined by my past. With Matthew by my side, I embraced my future, free, loved, and whole.